General of Washington, D.C. filed a lawsuit Wednesday against Facebook over the Cambridge Analytica scandal. Prosecutors are accusing the social media company of misleading users about the security of their data. The lawsuit came hours after the New York Times reported Facebook made data sharing deals with some of the world's largest companies. Those companies reportedly had access to private messages and complete lists of friends. CBS News correspondent Tony DeCopel has more.
In April, Mark Zuckerberg told Congress that Facebook doesn't sell users' personal data.
We limit a lot of the data that we collect and use.
But according to a New York Times investigation, what the company has been doing is sharing that data. For years, in fact, striking special deals with more than 150 different companies, including Netflix, Spotify, and Amazon. These deals reportedly gave Facebook access to more users, while partners got access to personal data. We asked Wired editor-in-chief and CBS News contributor Nick Thompson to show us where Facebook users may have been vulnerable.
Your biographical information, your friend list, your photos, what's in the news feed.
My activity log, all of that stuff could be available to outside partners. Most of those partnerships have ended, but certainly was available at some point.
The Times report says that Spotify and Netflix were allowed to read Facebook users' private messages, while Amazon was able to obtain users' names and contact info. And Microsoft's Bing was able to see the names of virtually all Facebook users' friends without consent. The Economist has called consumer data the world's most valuable resource. And in 2018 alone, American companies are expected to spend close to $20 billion harvesting it, all to better target advertising.
Some people have called consumer data the oil of the 21st century.
It is the oil of the 21st century, and we are now starting to have wars over it.
Spotify and Netflix say they never asked for and didn't use the access Facebook had granted them. Microsoft says it respected user preferences, and Facebook says everything it did was within its privacy policy. As for Facebook, DeMarco, it says partners don't get to ignore its users' privacy settings, and it's wrong to suggest they do.
All right, Tony DeCopel reporting. Tony, thank you. And joining me now is Paul Wagensill. He's a cyber editor for Tom's Guide, a digital publication that reviews tech products. Paul, thanks a lot for joining us. So those tech companies got a ton of user data from Facebook. What will they do with it?
Well, they already got it. They're really not using it much. What they were doing was initially a lot of it was agreements hammered out around 2010, 2011 to let Facebook kind of expand to other platforms. You got to remember Messenger was really not in play at that time. So what they wanted to do was to build Facebook into other people's services to sort of make itself essential and ubiquitous. And that way it's a hedge against the future so that it wouldn't be superseded by something else. So, for example, Spotify. Do you remember when Spotify first came out in the United States and you had to log in with your Facebook account? Right. What they had was a deal whereby you could message other people using your Facebook friends using Spotify to recommend songs. But in order to do that, Spotify needs access to Facebook's messaging system. And that's why it was able to see people's messages. It was just sort of part of the deal.
So how does the information that was shared with these companies sort of compare to the information that was sold to Cambridge Analytica?
Well, potentially it's much worse because you could see other people's private messages. However, there's no evidence that they actually accessed it that way. It's possible that some of them did. There were hundreds of companies that had deals with Facebook, all kind of individual. With Cambridge Analytica, it's more clear that the data was accessed and was used and was sold, passed on to third parties. That's definitely happened.
Now, Facebook has been in the hot seat this year. They've been answering a lot of questions. How did they rationalize sharing this information right here?
They rationalized because they needed to expand quickly. This was a kind of a crucial period in Facebook's growth when it was really started playing with the big boys, and they, as I said, wanted to make themselves kind of essential, and they were successful. Facebook's like a utility now. Almost everyone has an account, and it's kind of suspicious if you don't have one. It worked.
Now, the Attorney General of Washington, D.C. sued Facebook. We just mentioned that Wednesday for failing to protect millions of users' data. How can that lawsuit benefit consumers?
It can. They're asking for an injunction, and they're asking for an injunction to sort of force Facebook to kind of like implement stronger user safeguards. I doubt the injunction will be granted. but it's kind of a good kind of stake in the sand because I think what really needs to happen is we need to have sort of a GDPR on this side of the Atlantic, a federal law that protects user privacy, because right now there isn't one.
All right, so final question. What, if anything, can Facebook do to undo the damage? And I feel like I've been saying this over and over again, regain the public's trust.
You know, I think it's actually going to be okay, because most people are going to see this on the headlines, and 95% of them are going to be like, okay, and just move on and keep using Facebook. There will be people deleting their accounts. The stock will drop, but I still think
it's frightening when you can get your hands on, you know, the personal information, you know, your friends list, and, you know, a little bit of everything, your messengers, everything that you have that you think could be private would be between you and just your friends, but companies have it as well as Facebook.
Well, the deal is like you know, like your grandmother says, don't put anything online you wouldn't want the whole world to see.
Now, hey, let me tell you something. You are refreshing to my course on that one. All right, thank you again, man, Paul Wagon. So good to see you, brother.